Are you considering buying a property or investing in Spain, but you don't understand the visa process? Well, soon you will. I'm Chris Cassidy. This is the Nusun Network, and I am here today in Marbella with Victoria from Martinez, Echevarria Law. So, Victoria, welcome. Can you tell the audience who you are and who you work for and what it is you do?
Well, yes, I'm originally from Argentina.
Okay.
I studied law in Argentina and I moved here when I was 24 years old.
Okay.
So in Spain, what I did was to recognize my degree, and then since then I started working with foreign people.
Okay.
Most of my clients were from outside Spain.
Okay.
So I focus mainly in residence permits, like 5 years, and then I moved to Finland for family reasons for years, and then when I came back, 2016, I started working with real estate and residence permit as well.
The residence permit is the visa that we talk about?
Yes, visa and residence permits, they are two different things, actually. So you can get a visa for travel, for holidays, and then you can have a residence permit too.
And talk about a bit more about the job that you do now. So what is your typical client that you're seeing for the people for looking for resident permits or visas?
Many clients of us come from countries outside Europe, such as USA or Canada or many other countries.
UK.
UK, for example, yes, and they look for options to establish in Spain. Many of them just to live, and many other to live and work as well.
And just on that then, because one of the things that's came up recently, actually it's just stopped there, didn't it? The 3rd of April was the golden visa. And can you explain a bit what the golden visa was?
Yes.
And the change that's came in?
Yes, golden visa was a very flexible permit that allowed the holder to stay in Spain as much as he wanted. It was related to an investment of, for example, among other, real estate property for 500,000 euros or more. So the holder could request for this kind of permit that was granted for 3 years, and the family members could also benefit of the permit. And the holder had the option to stay in Spain, but for not to become a tax resident in Spain.
Okay, so what has changed?
Well, it has been abolished, so this is not a residence available at this moment.
Okay, so it's completely scrapped.
Yes.
We can no longer get it.
No.
And everything. And I've had a lot of people really worrying about that. You know, people who have been looking to come in. They've been asking me, how much do I need to spend, Chris, to get this? And I've had to break the news to say, well, you can't get it anymore. But what I would love to tell them is what the alternatives are. What else can they do, and what is the options? So as it stands right now, if you can't get this, what does that mean for people in terms of when they come over, how long can they be in the country for? What about the tax? If they were just going to follow the normal process and buy a property, what would it mean for them if they don't live in Europe?
Well, you can stay in Spain as a tourist, in tourist basis, up to 90 days in 180 days.
Okay.
So if you overstay this period, you become in irregular basis in Spain. So if the client would like to stay more time than that, so it's advisable to request a residence permit.
Right.
The residence permits available nowadays means that the holder has to be based in Spain, which also means that at some point they have to pay taxes in Spain as well as a resident. And it doesn't fit all of our clients. This was the main difference between golden visa and the rest of the residence permits available. If you now want to have a residence permit, you must know that at some point you should start paying taxes in Spain.
Right, so that's a real difference then.
Yes.
But it feels like there's still an option to get that residency, but it's about the taxes that seems to be the difference. And is there any other changes? So I'm just thinking about if I was wanting to come here, move here, work here, or maybe just come and retire here. what we're saying is there's still a way to get that residence permit, but you're going to have to be paying the taxes. And would you, for example, if you lived in the UK and you want to come over, would you pay Spanish taxes and UK taxes still, or would it be migrated over to Spain?
Well, there are, with many countries, Spain has agreements to avoid double taxation.
Okay.
So what we always advise our clients is to have an opinion from a colleague of us in terms of taxation as well.
Taxation.
So, yeah, so they know how much they will end up paying once they become residents in Spain.
Okay, so they do that. It's better to do that due diligence before you make the move.
Yes.
Of course. And how long does the residence permit typically take to get?
Depending of the permit that you request, because there are different permits based on the applicant's profile. So let's start with a non-lucrative residence permit. It is a permit that allows the holder to stay in Spain but not carry out any kind of working activity. Okay. This permit is requested by the applicant in the Spanish embassy in the country. Together with the application, you have to present many other supporting documentation that proves mainly that you have funds for your own maintenance in Spain during the period of validity of this permit. You also need to provide a health insurance certificate and some other documentation proving that you don't have, for example, criminal records or this kind of proof. It takes, as per law, up to 3 months. But for example, in embassies like the Spanish embassy in London, it takes like a month.
Okay.
So it's quite quick. Once it is granted, you get your visa in your passport, like the stamp in your passport, and you enter to Spain as a resident already. Right. So once here, you have to make an appointment at the police station and you get your residency card.
You get a card, okay.
Yes, this residency is granted for 1 year and then it can be renewed for periods of 2 years each.
And during that time, what if, for example, you were here and you were like, actually, I wouldn't mind starting a business?
Well, during the first year, you're not supposed to start anything.
You just change,
if it implies that you will work, of course, you can invest in some company, and have some other people working in the business, but not you. But after 1 year, what you can do is to modify your permit.
Okay.
There are possibilities to get different other permits based on this one first permit that you have been granted.
So you can make amendments maybe after the first year. Some people get bored, right?
Yes.
They'll certainly be like, right, I want to do something. I want to work. I want to,
that's right.
It can be a little bit lonely for some people. So they might want to do that. And okay, that's good to know that they can do that. So it feels like it's not the end of the world that the golden visa has ended.
No, there are several options for those who want to move to Spain.
Exactly. And actually, in a lot of the clients that I have who I sell property to, some of them, they're only wanting it for a holiday home anyway. So they're not here. They might come in the winter to get away from the cold and, in the UK or in Sweden or places because it can get very, very cold. And they're over for a few months and then they go back, maybe 2 months, then they go back and they come. So it's quite... It still doesn't really matter to them anyway. But we do know if they want to, they can get the residence permit. There's non-lucrative. And what other options? Because there might be people that aren't retired, they don't have a passive income, but they still want to be resident.
Well, yes, a very common and popular residence permit nowadays is Nomad visa.
The Nomad visa.
Yes, and we saw a demand of this kind of permit after COVID.
Yeah,
many people get used to work remotely, so if you fit in this kind of permit, so it's a very good option for the foreign who wants to establish in Spain, because this permit is granted for 3 years, the first one, so you don't have to after 1 year renew it, you have 3 years, and it allows the holder to work remotely through a company based outside Spain.
Okay.
But also allows the holder to work in a certain amount in a Spanish company as well.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so they can still do that. Okay.
Yes, and in this case as well, so family members can benefit of this kind of permit.
Right.
So the main requirement is that you are allowed to work remotely, which you have to prove by a statement that your company signs, stating that you are allowed to work remotely. and that you have a degree.
You have a degree?
Yes.
Yeah, in the subject?
Yes.
Okay. So if you've got a company, and is there any restrictions or anything, is there any qualifying questions for that company? If they got to meet a
The
certain
company
criteria?
has to be created at least 1 year before the application is submitted, so it has to have been in business at least 1 year, and you have to present proof of it. What we mainly present is the annual accounting of the
Okay.
company to show that, to prove that. And also the relationship has to be enforced at least the past 3 months. And then there is a minimum salary to obtain.
So to
Yes.
meet the requirements of the salary?
Yes.
And what about if it was your own company?
Well, if you have your own company, you can move to Spain based in this kind of permit, but we recommend to get an advice from a tax lawyer because it can have implication from a tax point of view, not only for you, but for your company as well.
Right, okay.
Because if you have the director of the company and you are moving to Spain and you are based in Spain, the tax authorities may understand that the company has, in fact,
It's moved.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is a special case that it's advisable to
Yeah.
get a tax lawyer
Really go
involved.
because there could be, for example, you've got a factory in the UK. I'm saying the UK because that's, you know, you could have a factory there. It's operating, but you're maybe a director, so you can still deal with it, but the factory's still running.
Yes.
As an example.
Yeah, it's
But
an example. From a immigration point of view, it's perfectly doable. But
doable.
you have to take in account that.
Tax.
Yeah, exactly.
Tax, okay.
Yeah.
And we did have a tax lawyer on before from your law firm, and she did talk about the different tax rates for businesses, etc. And you know, we do get a lot of business owners who are looking to buy real estate here because they want that holiday home. Some of them want to move permanently. So this is a really useful subject to be
Yes.
talking about, especially the tax. They're always wanting to know about tax because everyone worries about how much tax they're going to pay. So we've mentioned non-lucrative.
Yes.
We've mentioned
Nomad.
the nomad, or digital nomad, or is it?
Yes,
Yep.
it's the same.
Is there anything else?
Well, yes, there is another permit, which is self-employment residence permit.
Okay.
That it's similar to non-lucrative permit in the sense that the applicant has to request for it to the Spanish embassy in the country. With this kind of permit, you are allowed to work in the activity that you have informed the authorities, and the main proof for this permit is to show a business plan together with proof that you have means for carry out this activity once you are in Spain, and you have all the resources available to start with the business.
Yeah.
The procedure is that you draft the business plan. It has to be like approved by a independent organization here in Spain. This is something that we help clients with.
Okay.
And once this part is ready, so you submit your application in the embassy, and as below, there is 3 months to get a resolution on the application. If it is granted, so you collect your visa and you enter to Spain as a resident. Once you enter to Spain, you have to register yourself as self-employer and get registered in Social Security system.
Social Security, okay.
Yes, exactly. And once these steps are done, so you can request your identity card, your TA card.
Okay. And how long does that last? Sorry, you might have said it, but how long does that last
The
for?
permit is for 1 year, and you can renew it for 4 years.
4 years, so you do it for one, and then after the 1 year for this, is there anything that they look at? Do they want to look at your business, or maybe your tax? What is it? Did it, or is it just a straight? You go in, you renew it, and that's it, or do you have to go through any processes or questions?
You have to prove that you really have had this business running. You know, so you have to present different certifications that the activity was real. Yeah.
Right, okay. So you've still got to do a little bit, but just make sure during that year you're getting all your evidence together,
Yes.
knowing that you're going to have to do that. And then after that, you get 4 years.
Yes.
perfect. And during that time, if they get the residency permit for the first year, what about things? I think you mentioned briefly you have to have healthcare for the year. Is there anything that you can get, in the UK, for example, for healthcare? You can just use it; it's free. But are we saying that you have to use your insurance's healthcare if there's any issues?
For non-lucrative residence permit, so you have to have a private health insurance.
Okay.
And once you become resident, you can switch or move your private health insurance to the public one, but you have to pay the fees. It's not for free.
It's not free.
But you can, this is available for residents, so you can start with the public health system.
So you start with private.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then after it, if you want to change to public, is that free?
No, it's not free. You can change, but you have to pay the fee
Still
to the
need to pay.
yes. But this is for non-lucrative residence permit. For employment residence permit, you will take benefit of the Social Security because you will pay a fee as a freelance.
Right, okay. So because you're paying into the Social Security, you're getting the benefits of the healthcare,
Yes.
public healthcare, but not for a non-lucrative. That makes sense, okay. And is there any other visas, or is that the main visas that you've picked up on?
Then there are the residence permit based on a relationship with Spaniards or European citizens as well. We have many clients applying for them, and a very typical case is a marriage with one of them being from Ireland and the other one being from UK.
Yeah.
So we request in first place the residence permit for the European citizen, and then we request the permit for the family member.
Got you. So if you've got a relationship with someone, a family member, a close family member in Europe, anywhere in Europe, it doesn't have to be Spain, then we can still get that.
Yes, the main requirement is that the European citizen is based in Spain, so we have to firstly request his or her residence permit, and then register the family in the city hall. Empadronamiento is it called in Spanish, and then we can apply for the family members.
Got you. And just on that, it's good you say that. So you meant, for example, I've got a lot of Irish clients, right, who come to me and they're part of Europe. But just on this, right, so I know they can live here, but if they're wanting to work here, even though they're part of Europe, do they still have to register to the Social Security? Is there tax things there they have to deal with?
For citizens from Europe that want to stay in Spain more than 3 months, they are supposed to get registration in Policía Nacional and obtain what it's called CUE, Certification of European Citizenship.
Yeah.
So there are different ways to get this certification. One of them is by saying that you are not carrying out any kind of working activities, so you have to provide proof of means, and you have to provide a private health insurance. This would be an option. Another option would be that you work in Spain. Then you need to prove that you have a working contract and a pay slip. Another option would be that you are a self-employer.
Yeah.
So in this case, you have to prove that you have been registered in the Social Security and that you are actually paying taxes.
Got you. So there's still things, they can't just come over and just, that's the aim. They've still got to go through certain processes.
Yes.
But they don't have to worry about the whole rigmarole of
No, it's a very simplified procedure. Some documentation attached to the application, but apart from that, you get your residence permit from the very day you apply for it. So.
Yeah, you've covered quite a lot there about the different residency permits and visas. I say visas, but residency permits. But I've got a lot of clients who are, they'll buy villas and land here, and they've got big businesses. They're successful people, or they're entrepreneurs, and they might want another way of getting residency here. And I've heard some things about people can maybe buy businesses, or they can invest a lot of money, and I don't quite know what the answer is. But are you able to give us? Is there any solutions for those types of people?
Well, yes. In the same law that established Golden Visa, there are other kinds of visas for other investments, and one of them is in a business. In this case, the business has to have certain specifications and be special because of the activity they carry out or because of the amount of employments they create in Spain. So in some cases, it will be an option for them as well.
All right, so they've got to meet a criteria about what they're giving, what benefits they're bringing to the region, I'm assuming. And if it meets that criteria, then they can maybe get accepted for a residency permit. And what about just like entrepreneurs who are looking to come over? You know, they might not be buying a big business, but they might be coming over to start something small.
Well, yes, for these kind of clients, the best option would be a self-employment residence permit, the one that you request through the Spanish embassy.
So even though they're a business owner, but they would still be like deemed a self-employed person, and they can go through that route.
Yes.
So Victoria, we've covered a lot of the things that have recently changed, and you know, especially the golden visa, but we've looked at some alternatives as well. But what I found before, right, is sometimes when I speak to a lawyer on my podcast, 2 weeks later something changes and we never spoke about it. So I don't want to fall victim of that again. So from what you're seeing, are you seeing any different things that are maybe going to be enforced, or any new regulations or guidelines that are coming in Spain within the next year? Have you seen anything?
Well, yes, the immigration law has a reglamento, is it called in Spanish, that specify all the requirements for obtaining certain kind of permits and visas. And it has been a modification approved in 2024, and it will be enforced in May this year.
May this year?
Yes.
Okay, and what are those changes?
The main thing changed is the residence permit related to Spaniards, family members of a Spanish citizen.
Which is what we spoke about earlier. So,
yes.
So what is it is changing?
Nowadays, a family member of a Spanish citizen can apply for residence permit from Spain despite the fact the residence status. You can be in irregular basis in Spain and anyway qualify for that. And it affects mainly parents and children over legal age, because nowadays you can do this from Spain, and with this change they are supposed to apply for this permit from their countries. So they should have to come back to the countries and request a permit from them.
All right, so at the moment they can do it in Spain, but they're going to have to do it within their country, wherever that is. Okay, and is there any other changes that are coming in, or is...
There are many changes regarding this residence permit based in education. So you have to meet some requirements regarding the kind of education you will receive, and in some cases you are allowed to work as well together with your studies.
Okay.
And with this new regulation, you were allowed to work in almost all the cases.
So there's maybe people coming here to study, and are they only looking at certain subjects of study, or can you study anything in Spain?
Well, not every study fulfill the requirements, but mainly studies related to languages.
Okay.
Of course, degrees and masters as well. Also, services linked to hospitality as well. So this kind of course would be suitable for this permit.
Understand. And anything else, or is that the main one?
Maybe more, but I have to go to the new legislation.
But in terms of maybe people, the business, people want to buy businesses, or people want to get a residence permit or a non-lucrative visa, there's nothing really different for those.
No changes of special.
Nothing major to report at this moment. I'm going to touch wood because it might change. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and hopefully it's given the audience some ideas about what they can do, right? Because it's not the end of the world. The golden visa has ended. They can still buy property here. They can still move here if they want to. It doesn't stop.
That's right. It's always worth to ask a lawyer, of course.
Just before we finish, is there any advice lastly, that you would offer people maybe who are thinking about buying, but they're just not too sure about the legal side of things?
Well, yes, it's a big decision to take, so it's always advisable to meet a lawyer before they make the decision.
And especially Martinez,
Yes, of
Echevarria
course.
Law, of course. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.